Why do we sometimes fail to perform up to what we're capable of when the pressure is on? It may not be so surprising to hear that in stressful situations we worry. We worry about the situation, the consequences, what others will think of us. But what is surprising is that we often get in our own way precisely because our worries prompt us to concentrate too much. That's right, we pay too much attention to what we're doing. Think about a situation where you're shuffling down the stairs. What would happen if I asked you to think about what you're doing with your knee while you're doing that? There's a good chance you'd fall on your face. We as humans only have the ability to pay attention to so much at once, which is why, by the way, it's not a good idea to drive and talk on the cell phone and under pressure. When we're concerned about performing at our best, we can try and control aspects of what we're doing that should be left outside conscious control.
Popular ride-sharing firm Uber has had its license to operate in London revoked in a surprise move by the city's regulator. There were multiple reasons for the decision. TfL cited the company's approach to reporting criminal offences. In August, a senior officer within London's Metropolitan Police Service wrote to TfL about Uber's slowness to report a passenger's accusation that her driver had sexually assaulted her. TfL said it was also concerned about how Uber obtained medical certificates and criminal records checks for drivers. The straw that broke the camel's back may have been the company's Greyball software, an internal application that Uber may have used to block regulators' oversight of the Uber app.
So how does a growth mindset do that? It turns out that there are physiological manifestations to mindset. Brain scans show that for people with a fixed mindset, the brain becomes most active when receiving information about how the person performs, such as a grade or a score. But for people with a growth mindset, the brain becomes most active when receiving information about what they could do better next time. In other words, people with a fixed mindset worry the most about how they are judged, while those with a growth mindset focus the most on learning. There are other consequences of mindset. People with a fixed mindset see effort as a bad thing, something that only people with low capabilities need, while those with a growth mindset see effort as what makes us smart, as the way to grow. And when they hit a setback or a failure, people with a fixed mindset tend to conclude that they are incapable, so, to protect their ego, they lose interest or withdraw. We observe that as lack of motivation. There is a lot that we can do to change mindsets, but here are 3 things that any of us can do to instill a growth mindset in ourselves and in those around us. First, recognize that the growth mindset is not only beneficial, but it is also supported by science. Neuroscience shows that the brain changes and becomes more capable when we work hard to improve ourselves. Second, learn and teach others about how to develop our abilities. Learn about deliberate practice and what makes for effective effort. When we understand how to develop our abilities, we strengthen our conviction that we are in charge of them. And third, listen for your fixed mindset voice, and when you hear it, talk back with a growth mindset voice. If you hear, "I can't do it," add, "yet." My request to you today is that you share this knowledge about the growth mindset with your family, friends, and schools so that all of us can go and fulfill our potential. And empathy has two qualities. One is the understanding part of it. This is just a regular definition, the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. And the emotional part. Empathy has basically two channels. One is the body channel. If you talk with a sad person, you're going to adopt a sad expression and a sad posture, and before you know it, you feel sad. And that's sort of the body channel of emotional empathy, which many animals have. Your average dog has that also. Loneliness creates a deep psychological wound, one that distorts our perceptions and scrambles our thinking. It makes us believe that those around us care much less than they actually do. It makes us really afraid to reach out, because why set yourself up for rejection and heartache when your heart is already aching more than you can stand? I was in the grips of real loneliness back then, but I was surrounded by people all day, so it never occurred to me. But loneliness is defined purely subjectively. It depends solely on whether you feel emotionally or socially disconnected from those around you. And I did. There is a lot of research on loneliness, and all of it is horrifying. Loneliness won't just make you miserable, it will kill you. I'm not kidding, chronic loneliness increases your likelihood of an early death by 14%. 14%. Loneliness causes high blood pressure, high cholesterol. It even suppresses the functioning of your immune system, making you vulnerable to all kinds of illnesses and diseases. One of the things I do in my psychology seminar is I assign papers to students, and then I extract out propositions from the papers. And they're propositions that are debatable. Well, what you want to do as an educator is you don't want to put forward a specific point of view. Not when what you're trying to do is to discuss a contentious issue. What you want to do is teach people how to take an argument apart and formulate a response. And to do that, it's actually extraordinarily useful to arbitrarily assign positions to people. They're issues that don't go away. Well, why? Well, because they're so complex. They don't lend themselves to easy unitary solutions. One of the things you want to learn if you're educated is that on any complex subject there's a lot to be said. And that you're going to come at that with your particular ideological bias, let's say, your temperamental bias, maybe even you might even come at it with things you've actually thought about, although that's pretty damn rare. But you need to learn just exactly how localized your viewpoint is. So the three things that I think it really takes to be an effective manager are these. First of all, learn to delegate. You know, the most important thing is you have to trust your people to do work themselves, and if you're in the business of overseeing every single decision they make, you're not going to be a very effective manager, because you'll be stretched too thin, and you'll certainly never be able to rise to higher levels of management where you're overseeing dozens or hundreds or even thousands of people. So that's the first thing. The second is work hard to understand what the people underneath you do. There's this tendency to think you know. If I came up through one skill, as I oversee people with different skills, I'm just gonna trust them to get it right, and you have to. Of course, you're not gonna be able to understand what everybody on your team does all day, but if you can understand their motivations, their terminology, their way of communicating, you're gonna be a lot better as a manager. And finally, this is a kind of simple thing, but have as many one-on-one meetings as you possibly can. I think one thing that there's a lot of evidence is that having one-on-one meetings, especially with your direct reports, is one of the strongest predictors of success as a manager. Big meetings aren't good. Little meetings can be very good. It's time-consuming. It is hard, but it's a thing that really correlates with success as a manager. Now, what's really interesting about this time is that because of coronavirus, kids have all this time to self-reflect and self-assess. And so we should be actively promoting meta-learning during this time. And so what I've suggested is that we promote the idea of a learning journal. So the idea is this. Let kids decide their own learning path. Let them decide what they want to learn. It could be if they want to learn how to cook. It could be they want to learn how to drive a car. It doesn't matter. What's important is that they write down their learning journey. I encourage people to provide feedback to one another. It's a gift. It's also often part of your job. But too often, we don't go far enough. So I suggest that we create psychological contracts. You don't do it with everybody, but it's an opportunity to agree to exchange extremely honest feedback by mutual consent in a safe and trusting way. I say to somebody who trust, whose opinion matters to me, I'm getting up on stage. We know that the more comfortable we feel around someone, the less effort we will make about how we appear, and conversely, the more anxious we are about the judgment of others, the more our reflection has the power to horrify us. The issue is never that of our appearance, it is about our sense of our vulnerability to humiliation. When we meet people who are perpetually sick with worry that they are not attractive enough, we should not rush in with physical compliments. This is only to foster and unwittingly reward an aggravating criterion of judgment. We should learn to spot the wound in their early relationships that have made it so hard for them to trust that they could matter to others in their basic state. And that therefore perpetually evokes in them an unflattering self-image. They are not ugly per se, they were when it mattered left painfully unloved and ignored to an extent that they are liable never to have recognized or mourned adequately. Their arrival in the world did not delight a few people as it should have done, and therefore need compassion, sympathy and emotional validation far more than they will ever require the tools of outward beautification. Feeling ugly stems from a deficit of love, never of beauty. That means the company's wasted time making the gift, it means the giver's wasted time giving it out, and it means the recipient's wasted time returning it. There's a way to fix this. There is a very specific gift that is always worth the exact same to both the giver and the receiver. It's called cash. The good thing about cash is that the receiver can always make use of 100% of its value. The bad thing about cold, hard cash is that it's cold. It doesn't say anything except, here take some money. So this is a conundrum.